Racing hearts, burning streets where the wild things meet. Fast lane, rebel cries, we're chasing the highs. In the dark of night, our lights collide. Electric dreams, we're alive. Going for the night, we're born to roam in the field service life, where the thrill of the chase cuts like a knife. We're born to rise in the fire and the strife.
All
Ready?
right. Welcome to the Field Service Life podcast. I have on today for our very first episode, John Flores, a very good friend, near and dear friend, also former coworker. Lots and lots of experience in the field service industry. John, you want to give us a little intro?
Sure. My name is John Flores. I've been working for Pillar Inc. for 35 years. I've done everything from technician to cooking to commissioning. Um, and mostly it's been answering the phone with questions lately. So that's my experience.
Awesome, awesome. 35 years. Wow. That's some long career. How long till you retire?
Oh, I figure something less than 5 years. I think the director of services is kind of anxious about the whole thing. He's looking to what do they call that? Uh, Reintroduce my position elsewhere. Uh, and what they'll do is they'll just hire another body, as it were. As far as an understudy or something like that goes, that's not really an industry standard. So whatever happens, happens, as it were. But as far as that goes, that they'll learn the hard way, the way I had to learn.
Seems like the hard way is the only way anybody learns in the field service industry.
Nowadays, yes, yes.
So what originally drew you into this field?
I was ex-Navy. From high school, I learned something about electronics. A fellow named of Mr. Don Edwards taught me um, basically the result was build me an amplifier, and we went through Ohm's law, DC, AC, whatever theories, and we ended up building an amplifier. I remember putting it up against a window, and we could hear people ganging up the amplifiers and so on. We could hear people from a half mile away, a mile away, and so on, dogs barking and so on. And then the band started playing. That was pretty awful. After that, I joined the Navy as a coner, sonar, radar, or radio rather, and as a navigation technician, I qualified. Um, I qualified quartermaster and learned how to steer the ship and where we're going and stuff. I also had some nuclear trained friends who were technicians themselves, and as a technician, navigation technician, I then went to work for a government, what they call the Crystal City Bunch, and it's a company that operates as a government contractor. So what ended up happening there is, as a technician, I went to work for this company and learned that I like machines, and then I went to work for Pillar, for KW Control Systems before it became Pillar, and as a technician once again. To let you know how much I like it. I had the position of assistant to the director of services, a regional service manager, or whatever you want to call it. And I did not like it one bit. I had to deal with people. I had to deal with contracts. I had to deal with fiscal issues and so on. And through July, the company president and the director of services came up to me and it's like, this isn't really working out. So November, um, I pretty much had to poop or get off the pot, as it were. So what ended up happening was I just told them, get me back to my blanket machines, and they smiled real big. And I remember the director of services telling me that, boy, has he got a job for me. And that was my introduction to a large system. I've done these before, but this was a large system north of Middletown. Um, 10 machines, and it had all sorts of requirements to it. But I really like doing the technician thing. I'm sure I'll deal with people because I have to, but usually it's things like, um, well, with one of the construction companies, for example, we're doing this work, we're doing that work, and so on and so forth. So we're allowed to do this other work over here, and so on, so we don't get in each other's way. And it's still a technician thing though when you get down to it.
So technician life is what it's all about. You're not wanting to get involved in the politics and the management and
No,
any of that stuff.
no, not at all.
It's not for everybody.
It's de-
Definitely isn't for everybody.
it's definitely not for everybody.
All right. So can you tell me about the first time you went out to a job by yourself, in this industry?
It's a job I myself in this industry was I remember back in the early 90s, I went to work at a site which had a transistorized UPS. There was not even a place you could connect the computer to. And what was happening was the customer was complaining about phase C going into overcurrent every few minutes. So I went over there with my amp clamp, and sure enough, every few minutes the thing would go into overcurrent, whether it was in bypass or in UPS. And I traced it to his printer. And what was happening was it would go to the printer, and there's a drum that has to be heated up in order to be able to um, get the ink to coagulate onto the paper, to stick to the paper. Great, except that it takes power to do that. And when you heat up the drum, whatever current you have coming in, whether it's phase A, B, or C, in this case, it was C, that's what's going to happen is the printer is going to overcurrent that phase because it goes from 4 amps normally to over 12 amps. And guess what? You're going to go to bypass that way.
What made you even look at that?
Oh, he was complaining about it. It's like, well, Facey, and, okay, fine. So let's hook up an amp clamp to it. And sure enough, it was doing it. And it was, I remember this room. It was a horrible little room. Um, Lots of wire all over the place, lots of panels all over the place, and a printer off to one corner. So I started chasing this wire around, and um, as a technician, that's what I do. I chase this wire around, and sure enough, what ended up happening was I found it going into this printer. It's a strip that the printer was plugged into, and sure enough, what was happening was whenever it heated the drum, that's when it went into overcurrent. So I asked him, could you just put that strip on utilities? Is it really going to hurt the printing process all that much? And that's what he ended up doing. And after that, no problems at all. It
Must
had
feel
nothing
good.
to, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. I resolved an issue. This is all it was. And that was the first of many issues. So sure.
So does that when you go into do a job like a maintenance or whatever versus going in to fix a problem, how do you feel at the end of fixing a problem?
It feels good to know that the machine was doing what it was supposed to be doing and the customer has a better understanding of it. That's a big deal.
So
So
the education aspect is what you like.
yes, and the customer oftentimes does not know what they have. And once I train them a little bit, this is a UPS or whether it's rotary or static, and once they understand what it is that they have, that's better off for them because now they have a better idea of what they can do.
Right. So when you walk into a place when there's a new problem, and if it's something you've never seen before, what approach do you take to go about, like, what's the start to finish? Like, how do you go against a new problem that you've never come up with before?
For a new problem, I go into a location with a machine, with one of our machines. And once again, it doesn't matter whether it's static or rotary or a system problem. That is to say, the system is doing something or not doing something that it's supposed to be doing, or whatever the case
When you
is.
say system, just for the people who aren't in this industry, because right, that's who this podcast is aimed at.
Yes.
You mean like the switch gear that connects to the UPS, that connects to the ATS, that connects to the STS, so on and so forth?
The switchgear, the STSs, the ATS, the diesel, if there is one, the UPS itself, the controls that support all of this thing. Um, we have a product called a master control section, the MCS, and it's permissive in nature, and it allows things to happen as it were when things are supposed to happen. And when I see something that um, is happening too much, a very recent example was a system was reporting that it had a mains failure, for example. Okay, there was no mains failure. Nothing recorded a mains failure, but the PLC, the programmable logic controller, the brains of the system, said, "Oh, yes, there is." So I had another technician go in there and look at it, and he found that it was in fact getting a mains failure from a weak relay. That's all it was. So once he replaced that relay, and he just for kicks and giggles, he also lengthened the timer that the PLC looks at this thing at. And once he did that, especially the relay, the problems went away. So now you have a system that is doing what it's supposed to be doing versus claiming that there's a mains failure when there isn't.
Gotcha. Okay, probably should have started with this, but being that this is a new podcast and this is the first episode, there's a lot of different kind of field service technicians out there. So specifically, you said UPS, STS, switchgear. Can you just give a brief explanation of what each of those are?
Sure. You have the UPS, the uninterruptible power supply. A rotary UPS has an actual motor generator that runs through it. Some of them are built to take whatever power comes in, whatever voltage, whether it's 600 volts, 480 volts, 13,800 volts, let's say. Um, there are some rotaries that use transformers to transform up and down the voltage. Those are the rotary UPSs. The nice thing about rotary UPSs is you'll have a system um, that let's say you have motors and things of that nature around there. We don't care what the power factor is. We really don't. So power factor could be zero in one direction or the other, and it ain't going to matter to us. With a static UPS, it suddenly does matter. The nice thing about static UPSs is the typical static UPS is dual conversion. You have a rectifier of some kind where AC voltage comes in, gets turned into DC voltage, and then an inverter takes over and turns that DC voltage back into AC voltage, which is what your computers use, your product uses. You could have as a DC source either batteries, and the new wave is lithium batteries. The old style, since the 1850s or so, is lead acid batteries. That's very old technology. You also have a mechanical battery, a flywheel, that allows you to continue to power the DC link for your inverter. The nice thing is you can put the thing to bypass. Power comes directly from the utility, whatever that power might be, going out to your load. And all you do is increase or decrease your inverter output, the voltage, so as to minimize the kVARs, the volt amps apparent, if you will, coming from utility through the generator by the inverter and going out to your load. When the utility power goes away, a very fast-acting static switch will turn off the utility power, turn off the in this case the relay that energizes the utility power, and the inverter then will power the load via the batteries or the mechanical battery, whatever the case might be. And then when power comes back, it just matches the utility voltage again, and off you go. As far as switches go, these things can be ganged together or paralleled using switch gear, breakers, things of that nature. They talk to each other and so on. They trade kWs, kbars, frequency, and load, and so on. But the other part of the thing is the switchgear itself, where you have breakers that and a controller that monitors the health of the UPSs and so on. And what you can do at that point is if a UPS becomes unhealthy, that is, it's no longer able to supply the load. If you have enough UPSs to supply the load, if it drops offline, not a big deal. It just drops offline. If you don't, if you're no longer redundant, that's what it's called. If you're capacitive, then the whole thing goes over to bypass. And that's true whether you have a rotary UPS or a static UPS. Other things that you can supply are things like diesels. You can front end a diesel system with an ATS, an automatic transfer switch. And the diesel system will then supply the automatic transfer switch if the utility goes bad. Hospitals, things of that nature, are supposed to get their diesels up within 7 to 10 seconds, I think it is. With our systems, some of them are good for about 14 seconds or so with the mechanical batteries. So speed, it's nice to have, but it's not as critical as a hospital is. We do have some hospitals that run on UPSs, and they depend on the UPS to keep the lights on, as it were, in the operating theaters. And then the diesel catches up and it continues feeding the UPS and the load. The UPS can control the diesel once again, but it's not typical. Usually a diesel system will control or output power to a system, and the UPS will take that power and do whatever it has to do. There are systems where, in our case, the rotary UPS controls the diesel that parallels with the UPS and continues supplying power under the direction of the UPS itself. This goes through the switchgear system that controls to the diesel, and the diesel then supplies the power necessary to run, not only recharge the UPS, but also to run the power under the supervision of the UPS. Other systems are building systems. For example, you have BMS, building management system, where the switchgear, the condition of the breakers, the health of the breakers, the health of the diesel, the UPSs, all come to a large computer. It's not a supercomputer, it's just a large computer. And it monitors the health of all of these systems, and it outputs an alarm page, if you will, for the technicians or the engineers for that site. And usually it's a dot matrix printer, if you remember those. Occasionally you'll have like a Hewlett Packard printer or an Epson or something, an inkjet, and it'll output to the a page at a time, but it still outputs the alarms to the engineers. The engineers can also get an audible alarm, and they can go look at the master control sections and see what alarms are active, and that will give them an indication of the health of the UPS, the diesels, the switchgear, STSs, things of that nature. STS stands for static transfer switch. There's one in New York City, for example, where you can transfer from one system to another via the static transfer switch. You can have 100% of the load on one system, and some static transfer switches are good for 180 degrees out of phase transfer. That is to say, if phase A is 180 degrees from the other phase A, it just does the transfer anyway. It affects the transfer anyway. So you'll have one UPS at some load and the other UPS at some other load. And if there's a problem where that UPS power output fails, it goes directly to that load. Another system has an AB system, something similar. And all that does is it has a large STS, a large static transfer switch. And if one side fails, then it goes immediately to their side. And we have had failures of that nature. Customer induced, usually, sometimes it's technical induced.
All right. So let me paint the picture for the people who are, who haven't been involved in this industry and don't really understand what we're trying to get at. So the switchgear, picture a big box full of breakers, right? And what's connected to these breakers, you have the utility power that's coming from the power lines outside, and then you have power coming from a generator that's usually not immediately on. And then sometimes you have an STS preceding that has the utility on one side and the generator power on the other side. And if power goes away from the utility, the generator will start and it'll turn on. Now, after this box of breakers, the static switch, you'll have, I'm sorry, the switch gear, you'll have UPSs that are also fed by these breakers. And these UPSs have a battery backup. So when you lose that power, the UPS batteries will continue to power the load. And when we say load, we mean whatever. If it's the hospital, like you said, the theater where they're doing the surgery, it could be did we lose John? Oh, it could be data centers where they're running your Facebook, they're running your Twitter, they're running whatever. And so if it loses power, they don't actually lose power. The UPS goes onto battery, and then the switchgear tells the generator to start. Generator starts, it turns on, the static switch flops, or sometimes you can even do that functionality inside the switchgear and avoid a static switch, and everything is golden, right? Power never goes away. That's the ultimate
That's
goal
cool.
of the critical power industry, right? To make sure that things that are critical never lose power, and they have all these devices that John was explaining that prevent this, right? And they work together. And then, like he said, the BMS, the building management system, that is sort of a like an internet based or SNMP based device that tracks and monitors everything and allows an operator to sit in a control room and look at everything all at once from a screen, kind of like a visual display. Does that sum it all up?
Yes, it does. That's a very nice sum up. And the BMS, whether it prints out an alarm locally at the control station or whatever, somebody's going to have to get off their butts and go look at a screen display to see what the problem is, wherever the problem might be. And it may require some other activity on their part, replacing parts, replacing a machine, getting a machine online or offline, as the case may be, just because of the nature of the alarm.
Or
It
if they're going to pick up a phone and call you to come fix it.
may be a phone, yes. Yes.
Speaking of, what how often are you on call where you have to worry about your phone going off and having to get up and go?
Oh, nowadays, maybe every third week or so. I share on call with a fellow from Dallas, and he comes down and I go up there once in a while. But if he has a problem, I usually attend to it. If I have a problem, he attends to it. But it's not a big deal. It really isn't. And we do get extra money out of it. It's we are on call, so that's a
That's always
nice thing.
nice.
Yes,
Extra money's always nice.
always nice. Yes.
Okay, so on calls aside, I know this is kind of a weird thing to ask because there's no such thing as typical, but what's a typical day in your career?
For me, my typical day is going through my emails, making sure that everything is done up, looking at my schedule forward and ahead of my schedule to make sure that everything is planned correctly. An example would be middle of next week. I'm going up to Middletown, New York, for example, to teach a class on a present day UPS level one, and it's to only one guy because he's going to be in the class. Turns out for level two. And the other technicians in that class have already seen the machine, they've already worked on it, and so on. So they have some minimal amount of experience as level one technicians, but they're all going to go to level two. The fellow, unfortunately, who I'm taking over for is going to be in the hospital. He's looking to see about getting out of it, but we'll see what happens there.
Hmm.
And as far as the rest of the day goes, not a whole lot. Just make sure that my shirts are in order and so on. My pickup, I have a pickup now. My pickup is in order and off I go. And I still have all my tools and the like.
So in your current position, you're not in the field as much as you were previously.
Correct. Uh, it's just
So
not good.
being a former employee of the same company, I understand that unlike most of these manufacturers, right, your product, you have the product itself, and that product, whether it be Rev 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever, it also has different variations within that.
Sure.
Okay. And that's just for the main UPS product. However, your switchgear for each build is different. So it can be designed like a completely different system. The way it goes to bypass, the way it handles a load situation, the way it handles a failure. So it's fair to say that there wouldn't be really stupid questions, right? Because each system is different, and if you're in charge of a large area and
Yes.
you're not, constantly looking at the what that system is specifically designed to do, even if you're the guy who designed it, right? You designed so many, you don't really remember instantly
Yep.
which one everyone does. However, the technician that services that area is going to be very familiar because he operates it a couple times a year, every year.
Yes.
So,
I, well,
um,
maybe stupid question was a misnomer on my part, but yes.
I only bring it up, John, because I want to protect you. You know, you're my good friend. That I hate to see you get in trouble. So, but
That's probably for. Um, you have within the hierarchy of the company I work for, you have a product, the classic product, and then you have generations of this product. But along with that comes switchgear, and the original company started off as a customs house. That is to say, our engineers would design the switchgear to do what the customer wanted or needed it to do. And we just kept that going. And now this company that I work for, they continue doing that. So you might have two systems that are very similar. They do the same thing. They're both 13,800 volt systems as an example, but they might be slightly different in the way they do things.
right.
It,
Okay. Um, so all right, so you have the systems that are different, which makes your job, more difficult than maybe some of the technicians from some other manufacturers, other OEMs. What would you say changed the most in this industry since you've been here in 35 years?
the thing that changed the most, say, is not so much the gear itself, but the manpower, um, the directors and the supervisors and so on. They've had to get used to the way the equipment was made. For example, we now have a new product, and it's completely the power flow is the same. It's the line interacted UPS, no matter how you look at it, but the controls are different. That's the only real issue that we have, and the engineers have had to get used to it, and the management has had to have gotten used to it also, because guess what? The old product used to be able to do this and that and the other thing, and the new product doesn't. Or vice versa. The new product is capable of doing this, that, or the other thing, whereas the old product never did. An example of that would be um, controlling an external breaker. Is if the new product is checks itself out and is ready to control the breaker, great. It goes ahead and does it, assuming that switch positions and so on, because it's capable of monitoring such things. Um, on the path of the breaker, it'll allow you to do it. If it doesn't see those inputs, then it's not even going to enable the breaker for you. The old product, yeah, just go ahead and do it, and you try to do it, and the breaker fails. Then you have to figure out why. So that's the real difference between the two products.
Well, not just about the products, in the industry in general. Have you noticed anything that's really changed drastically since when you first, started
Yeah,
visiting job sites to now?
reduced load, a lot of reduced load. Some of our equipment is in locations where they have become extraordinarily inefficient simply because the customer has reduced his load. An example would be customer X, let's call it. It's a government customer, but because of COVID, everybody worked from home, and all he had for a load was literally three internet switches, three routers. That was it. The rest of his load was made up of transformers that he had to heat up with 480 volts and cool down with air conditioning, and PDUs that he has to heat up and cool down with air conditioning, and so on. And the UPS went from 40 or 50% load down to 10% because that's all it takes. A lot of other customers are the same way, except that their people work in-house, but their load is very reduced. You no longer in some systems, I should say, you no longer need those huge machines. Whereas if you still want to back up an entire campus, let's say, a huge machine would be the way to do it.
Okay, makes sense. Um, the thing I think I noticed the most since I've been here and not nearly as long as you, I think I got in. Oh, I know I got in '05 when I got out of the military, is safety.
Oh, don't get me started on safety. Uh, these glasses, as an example, are not safety glasses. I have safety glasses, and they're prescription safety glasses, but that's what it takes to. Huh, I got a note from Zoom. That takes a bit of doing, a bit of. For instance, I order my prescription glasses through Amazon, and the company pays for them. I just have to turn in the receipt. So it's the readers mostly as cheaters, but my right eye has some really horrible astigmatism, so I have to have a correction for that, and the company paid for that, some of it anyway.
Okay.
As far as other things, it's a typical safety routine: steel toe or hard toe shoe, long pants, shirt, and so on and so forth. Everything made of cotton. And I recommend to my guys, at the very least, that they wear safety glasses, and if they wear clothes, to wear long sleeves and cotton. It has to be cotton. And even with a safety hat, you should wear a handkerchief or something around your head made of cotton, so that when the thing it's going to, if there's a blast, it's made of plastic, it doesn't melt to your head. That's a big deal.
So since you've been here and the safety standards have changed, do you think it's been good or bad for the industry? What are your thoughts on that? All that.
Well, looking at OSHA regulations, at one time I thought that safety was made for equipment manufacturers. That is to say, let's pass a new rule that says this, and off you go, and you have to buy their product. However, in looking back at things, it is an effort to keep the technician management safe and so on. So I would say, yeah, it is safer than it used to be. Back in the early 90s, oh, for crying out loud, we used to put our amp clamps right on the copper bar, click. Okay, we got 300 amps going through there. Like, okay, off we go. And nowadays, you don't do that anymore. It's the machine tells you what the current is, tells you what the voltage is, and so on. You don't have to reach inside the machine anymore for that. And if something were to happen inside the machine, then you're safer for it. I'll leave it at that.
Have you ever been shocked?
Oh, but yes, numerous times. I, I backed up into sync scopes. I backed up into other things. Um, I changed out batteries, and they were leaking, and just shocked the crap out of myself. It was pretty nasty sometimes. Have I been hurt by it? Mostly for being an idiot. It's like I can't believe I had my hand on ground all this time, and yeah, it happens.
What is one of the closest calls you had with the most dangerous situation you've run into?
That would have to be a customer where the breaker did not operate the way it was supposed to. What happened was the local technician had not cleaned it, and as a consequence, the breaker continued to cycle and then close, even though the machine was off. And I was thinking to myself, right at that moment, I should turn off the isolator. Therefore, it will not affect the other two machines. Well, just before I could react, the thing decided to close, and the other two machines cleared fuses, opened breakers, and all sorts of booming sounds came out. So that was the closest that I've been in a while.
Wow.
It was
What was the Go ahead,
that
I'm
was
sorry.
that was one of those systems that went from AB system AB type thing. So the STS is just switched over and not a problem, even though the fault was technician induced.
Gotcha. Now, on the same lines, what is the most catastrophic situation you walked into where, you show up on the job site and stuff was bad?
Funny guy. One day I decided to get away from the farm, as it were. So I decided to rent a hotel in town. So I drove all the way to Austin and rented a hotel in town. And I get this phone call. I even remember it was May 11th, 2021. And there was a horrible thunderstorm going on outside. I remember that. So I called the director of services and he's like, yeah, sure, do a courtesy visit, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. So I go over there and I'm talking to the guy on the phone and I hear on the phone this horrible crash banging booming sound and it turned out to be a lightning strike.
Yeesh.
And thankfully the guy was okay. The lightning actually fell a couple hundred feet from him. And driving along, I could hear the lightning a couple of seconds later in the open air, just through my vehicle. When I got to the site, however, I found that it had been struck by lightning and the ground had energized enough so there was enough voltage difference between one of the phases and the ground that it lit up and arced. And guess what? The whole rest of the thing arced as well. And
Yeesh.
that's into a 3 month horror story because that was an old machine and we don't make those anymore. I had to recover it for him.
So I think that time frame that you mentioned, I was actually there in the office, and I think I
Um,
remember this whole situation.
yeah, it took 3 months to punch holes and do other things, and the director of services was kind of not happy about the whole thing taking as long as it did. The customer certainly wasn't happy, but what else could I tell him? It's like, well, either I get to modify one of these other machines into something that you need, or we can claim that we just don't make this machine anymore, period, and
Which
leave.
would have been a true statement.
Yes, that is correct. And we don't make that kind of machine anymore. We haven't made one of those in decades,
Right.
but that's not what they wanted to hear. So we got them something that works.
Interesting. All right. Switch gears a little bit. Actually, one more on the same line of questioning. Was there
Yes.
any person in particular, and please feel free not to say their name or do, it's up to you. Was there any person in particular that was very, very dangerous and whenever he was on a job, you were extra on caution? Let's just say that.
Oh my God. Um, let's just say that a newer technician at the time was doing things that I did not approve of. And one of them was going to get him hurt, and it did. And I was ready for it. He wasn't hurt like bending over backwards hurt or anything of that nature. But you start to wonder about the customer's processes, about him getting hurt, and so on. There was another fellow who decided that he was going to be a monkey and climb up one of the mechanical batteries. And climbing back down after he did what it was supposed to do, his hand just happened to touch phase A of this mechanical battery. And of course, he was grounded everywhere else. So the thing literally launched him about 20 feet in the direction of the concrete corridor.
Yeesh.
Thank, oh, yeah. Thankfully, it was a hospital and they helped him out right away. and he turned out to be okay. It's just that, holy cow, you got to be kidding.
Was it one of the 16.5 megajoule
Yes,
batteries,
yeah,
mechanical batteries?
yes. Matter of fact,
How did he survive?
I don't know. He was literally shoved off the machine onto the concrete deck, and the hospital guys, we called them right away, and they came in, and that was the end of that. As far as personal hurt, yeah, there was one time when I did something stupid. We were testing some batteries, and I just happened to put the battery tester on top of the cabinet, and it fell down and cracked me open right in the head. Blood all over the place and stuff.
Ugh.
Uh, Thankfully, this was 1995, and we were able to uh, not stir the pot up too much, as it were. The guy did wear gloves and all the rest of it, and I did end up going to the hospital, and it had already dried and started healing by the time we got there. So that was that one. But um, this was a nice place in San Antonio. That was a long time ago. That's the only time I've actually been hurt by anything.
So you mentioned batteries multiple times. Would you say that they're the most dangerous thing that we deal with in this industry?
You cannot turn a battery off. Once it starts going, it'll keep on going until it's drained. Whether it's made of lead acid, lithium, nickel metal hydride, nickel iron, iron rust, it will just go until it's depleted. You cannot turn them off.
Right, and it's not just only about the energy, right? They're heavy. They're made of dense material. They're made of chemicals that if they spill, they can cause harm. So they're
Sure,
they're
they will.
dangerous in multiple ways.
Yes, I was testing a group of batteries from a battery manufacturer, and as soon as I picked the battery up and tilted it so I could get my fingers under it, all this acid starts coming out of the positive post and right onto my hands. So I went and washed real quick, and I told the guy they failed. And he was like, "You haven't even tested them yet." I was like, "Yeah, we did." And guess what? They failed.
Yeah,
So,
it failed the lift test.
yeah.
Or, or
Yeah. And you think you can drop things on your foot, on your leg, on whatever. Once again, batteries are, as you say, big and heavy and obnoxious. The really big batteries, the 450-pound batteries, for example, um, you use a battery lift. If the battery lift is in good shape, great, you don't have any problems. You just cart off the battery. If there's something odd about that location, for example, we had a customer who had gravel instead of concrete. Like,
oh no.
oh yes, you had to lay down melamine or something to so that the lift could traverse across the batteries, which were very close. Three strings of batteries, two aisles that you can traverse through. And what ended up happening there was um, the battery strings were a common battery string, so you had two UPSs feeding off one battery string, and they were old UPSs, very very old UPSs. So you had to have the extra isolation transformer and so on. But picking up the batteries, 450 pounds, yeah, you ain't doing it. You might shove it around some, but that's about it. The lift has to do the work.
Right.
You drop a battery on your foot, even if you're wearing steel-toed shoes, that does not protect the metatarsal, for example, the bones behind the toes. So you can break something. You can sprain something or strain something or whatever. And if you try to pick a battery up and you're just not in good physical shape, you can hurt yourself that way.
So yeah, it sounds like batteries are probably one of the most dangerous things in the field service, or at least for UPS techs. You know.
Yes, even the newest lithium batteries, although they're supposedly lighter than the older lead acid batteries, they're just as dangerous. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Um, okay, so have you ever been to a job where, okay, you knew what the problem was, there was a way to fix it, you needed to order parts or whatever the case may be, but you figured out a way you can MacGyver it and make it work temporarily, just to make the customer happy until you can come back.
Sure, you can do that with older relays. even the newer style relays have open contacts. Some of them do. Depends on who the engineer was. If you have a part that is not necessary, for example, you have redundant paths. You can turn one off and leave the other one running. You're still protected and what all. It's just a question of, and I've actually had a customer do that. I showed up at his site and I needed to replace fuses at one of his redundant paths, his static switch path, if you will, thyristor path. And he's like, no, we're in the middle of a storm and we're processing right now. So the correct answer is okay, I'm going to leave you on rectifier inverter path, the other redundant path, and you'll be protected. You have battery power and all the rest of it. That's the way he ran for the night. And the next morning I came in, he allowed me to go ahead and replace the fuses, and that was the end of that one. But just turning it off, a simple turning it off. Other customers, control power transformers is a big deal. Um, Sometimes the phasing will be such that the control power transformer will either short internally or otherwise not allow the power to go through. We have buses, 110 volt, 24-volt buses, and so on, that allow the power to go through, and they are diode coupled so that one will not affect the other. If you have one goes bad, we don't care. We just turn it off. And that's about as MacGyverish as I got. I'm sure you had something else in mind, something like, can you put this thing together in such a way that it will work until you can replace this part? Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Has there ever been any job sites where you got locked in or locked out, like
Oh,
locked into the data floor?
numerous times. Infamous story. Um, Fellow was carrying out gobs of stuff. I don't know where from. Doesn't matter. But he was at the FDNY data center, the call center, and sure enough, he came across a door which would not open for him. So he presses the big red button and shuts down half the floor. And it still wouldn't open for him. Like, oh, geez, I got my arms full of whatever. And he uses his tongue or knee or extended finger, I guess. I don't know. Doesn't matter. And presses the other button and shuts down the other half of the floor. And he made the news. And I know WPIX and WOR carried it. What's supposed to happen then, New York City has a backup for the backup. And their backup in this case is to send out a bunch of people with radios to each corner of the city. There's thousands of these things. And the idea is if you get hurt or something, you know to go to one of these people and get help, because they were out for a couple of hours while the customer figured out how to get power back. But they made the news. And other places, customers overload their equipment, put too little load on the equipment, that makes it inefficient to sell. Or what used to happen, diesels were 1.5 times the size of the UPS, and now they're just over the size of the UPS, whatever it might be. And as a consequence, whenever they do take a power hit, it's kind of iffy as to whether they'll go to diesel or not.
Yeah, especially if they're fully loaded, it might bog down the frequency or something, right?
Yes, that is.
Okay.
With line interactive UPSs, it becomes a real problem.
All right. Next question. What's the strangest thing you've ever found inside of a UPS that wasn't supposed to be there?
Besides the cockroaches and rat droppings, yeah, I don't want to go there.
All right, we can skip.
Cockroach droppings, I'll just leave it at that. It's like, dude, and another friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, used to go to a famous bakery in Boston, Massachusetts, and he found flour and fungus all over the place. And it's like, oh, that sounds nasty. Another place has to do with the railroad industry, and they would put a UPS in a room, and because it's an open space, guess what? It becomes a storeroom. So the UPS itself, no, it's not so bad. The rest of the room, it got loaded down with, please don't store things in here anymore. There was another customer, chip manufacturer of sorts, who claimed the UPS was a clean room, but when I opened the door to the UPS, there were cobwebs and dust and all sorts of nasty things all over the place. It just got nasty. They're not in business anymore, but that was a time ago. But those are the strange things that I found in UPSs.
All right. You mentioned clients a couple times. Have you ever met any that were eccentric or, very, very odd? I know this industry kind of draws people that are that can
Oh,
be kind of not so social, we'll call it.
how to be polite about this? I don't know who the customer was, and it is irrelevant. But the guy showed up 8 sheets to the wind. He was toasted, and his UPS was not under contract. It was actually a frequency converter, and not a drop of grease for years and years and years. As a consequence, the bearings, because it's rotary, welded themselves literally to where the thing would not run anymore. Thankfully, he had a spare in the same building, and we were able to, um, well, shove it into place. Using dollies and the like, we were able to shove this new rotary frequency converter into place and get him back up and running again. But holy cow, that's just not a very comfortable feeling to have a customer like that. Other customers, sure, they'll yell and scream, and I'll give them a phone and tell them to call a number. Uh, and it's not that I don't care. I shouldn't say I don't care, um, because what you're telling me, Mr. Customer, is above and beyond what I'm supposed to be able to withstand at such and such a site. Therefore, call this guy.
Right.
And
Call my manager.
sure, that's exactly what it is. Yes.
Okay. So I know you've had some heated situations with some job sites in the past, and obviously we won't mention the name. Um, how did you deal with, that irate person in that situation? Like what did you do to get past it, to move past your day and not let it ruin your night?
I've had one customer in particular, I remember up in New York, not New York City, New York State, upstate New York, where he was extraordinarily irate, and it was his custom, it was built into him. I don't know how else to describe it, to be irate, and he kept ordering me to making little things and things that did not affect the job, but they would work. So okay, fine. So I would go ahead and do such and such a thing for him, and it would work, and he'd get all sorts of mad and angry, and you're not doing what I told you to. And it's like, well, yes, I am actually. You asked me to make, as an example, um, signs and stickers and things that I could put on the machine, and he asked me to do that because apparently everybody else does that sort of thing. So as a technician, as a lead technician, as a matter of fact, I couldn't assign anybody else to do it because they were all busy doing things. So I ended up making the stickers myself, and he comes up to me and says, "This is not what I expected you to do. There's nobody else. I have to do it. I have to do this myself." This was a customer who eventually um, almost got into fisticuffs with one of our managers. And if it wasn't for the smallness of the room, the fact that they couldn't get out from under the table because the thing was what it was, um, they were opposite end of the tables. Um, they couldn't hit each other, but it was ready to go right then and there.
Wow, sounds like a tense situation.
It was very tense. The contractor was smiling away because he thought he'd get to see everything now. Well, yeah, you do get to see everything now.
A lot of characters in this industry, huh?
Yes, there are. And there's some characters who literally don't know anything. I had one customer call me up. His air conditioner guy had left. This was late November, so it was cool. And well, rather than make ice, I really don't need to make that. Okay, fine. So he calls the security guard of all people, yeah, can you go up to such and such a place and turn off the such and such a breaker? Well, she turned off the wrong one and shut down the air conditioner, the UPS, and the diesel, and all sorts of things. Great. 18 minutes later, the UPS goes down because it went through its batteries like it's supposed to. And then I get the phone call. Yeah, we know we have this UPS and et cetera, and can you? And I'm like, well, all you need to do is reach down and pump up this breaker and charge it, and then press the green button. And you hear silence on the lines. It's very painful, actually. And he says, we'd rather you come down and do it because you know how to do it. Oh, all right. So 40 minutes later, I show up. You know, this is going to cost you. This was before cell phones and the like. We had pagers back then. And you know, this is going to cost you $500 if I show up. And he's like, we'll pay for it. Okay, fine. So I go over there, and it was like a bunch of monkeys egging each other on. They did not know what they had. They did not know the UPS. They just didn't know anything. All they knew was they needed power and they needed air conditioning to keep the computer room going. This is the early 90s. And when I got there, it was like watching a bunch of baboons egging each other on to doing things. Somebody had egged somebody else to pumping the breaker and closing it. So now they have air conditioner, and the UPS was charging its batteries and doing what it's supposed to do, except that the output wasn't on. And they're all sitting on top of these boxes. And this fellow looks at me and he says, I can't help but feel that we're one push button away from energizing the computer room floor. So sure. I turned around and looked over everything and pressed a button, and the transformer charges. You could see it on the UPS, and I'm like, okay, you're energized. I filled out the paperwork and told him $500, please. He he didn't care. That's one kind of customer where you just don't know what you have. You it's it's not that it's irrelevant, it's just that it doesn't affect your life. You have the other kind of customer who used to be a machinist. He used to be an engineer of some kind. He's an electrician. He knows what's going on. He keeps very close tabs on his center of operation, as it were. So he knows what's going on. And there is no fooling this guy. If you go in there and do something, you better be straight with it and get it done, because he knows what's going on. He knows how it's going on. He knows how it's supposed to operate, what it's supposed to sound like, and all the rest of it. With a rotary UPS, not difficult to do. With a static UPS, you pays your money and you take your chances. How's that?
Right.
Yes.
All right. So are there, we've been talking about a lot of the things that are kind of annoying and not the best. Are there any sites that you just loved going to for whatever reason? Either the
Oh,
crew or
yes. Actually, there is. Um, do you mind if I put their names in on this?
no,
Or
it's up to you. Completely up to you.
um, the site used to be called AMD way back when, and then it went through and name change. Now we call it Expansion, and eventually it became Skywater. They have a site in Building One where we go in there, we do a preventive maintenance procedure, and we get out. And it works. It's great because they know what they have, they know how it works, they're redundant, and it's a piece of gear that, although it's old, we do have spare parts for it. So if something craps out, we can replace it and so on. But normally we just do go in there, do our PM, and that's it. We're done. We're in and out. And if it's an online PM, inside of 4 hours, because there's two machines with batteries, make it 5 or 6 hours because we have to test the batteries. If it's an online PM, like once a year or so, or an offline PM rather, we go in there, we do our tests, we turn it off, we turn it back on. We go, we don't have to go to bypass because the other machine takes over the load. We just have to isolate it. We isolate it, we put on our locks, we do the PM, and we're done. It's all very fast. It's all within a day.
Okay. And that's the reason why you just love this place versus other places?
Oh, they know what they're doing and they know what they have. Yes. The other buildings, the other sites, the other customers, yeah, maybe not so much.
Okay. All right. So what about field service itself versus like working in an office or working in a factory or whatever the case may be, what about it sets it apart and makes it the thing that you want to do for a living?
You get to see certain things that you haven't seen ever and probably will never see again. As an example, I remember driving through a field, I don't know what it was, somewhere in Pennsylvania, and it was pretty. It was beautiful. I just had never seen it before. And some places like Baton Rouge, for example, in Louisiana, you get to go to places, and the food is that's pretty good food they got over there.
Crawfish?
Oh yes, mud bugs. Oh God, yes, mud bugs, fish, a good shrimp poor boy, that sort of thing. You go to some other places. My brothers and sisters live in California, for example, so whenever I go visit out there, I stop in and visit with them. Other places like Virginia, North Carolina, those sorts of places, I have friends still working there, so I go visit them with them. As far as the job goes in Virginia, North Carolina, and so on, those sorts of places are places where the customer has or knows what he has. So working there is a bit of a dream. There's some days when you don't want to go somewhere, like, oh, can't we get somebody else to go? And usually the answer is yes. Well, if you really don't want to, or if you're busy doing something, or something is comes up, you can trade around. Um, you get you get the company, however, sometimes just doesn't have the manpower that it should have. I'll leave it at that. Is it a good thing? It keeps the cost down. But is it a bad thing? Well, all it means is you don't get all the time off that you want. Leave it at that.
Okay. So it sounds like there's some flexibility. It sounds like there's some perks to getting around and seeing different things. What about like travel perks? Do you take full advantage of that?
Oh yes. Uh, I'm a what do they call that? Platinum Elite or whatever the heck it is with Holiday Inn, for example. I have 2 million points with the Hilton chain. That's the Hampton Inn and so on.
2 million.
Two
That's
million,
awesome.
yeah. And Marriott as well, some 240 something thousand points, whatever the heck it is. But it's just a question of, okay, if you want to take some time off and go somewhere on your own, you have this ability to do that. Um, the nice thing about the company I work for, other companies are different. We do get a car, we get gas mileage and all the rest of it. So that's provided to us as part of the cost of doing business. Some other companies, they will provide a stipend for the technicians to do their business with the vehicles and whatever they maintain them and so on themselves. But it's a pretty good stipend. It just depends on where you want to go, what you want to do. I do have a lot of time off, and I do a lot of things for the company I work for. I'm in the midst of writing, for example, a preventive maintenance procedure for enclosures.
Okay.
You know, for the UPS, we have one for the switchgear, we have one for the switchgear, but there's nothing for the enclosure itself. Well, I'm taking care of that.
Okay. Sounds like you're an asset to the team.
God, I hope so.
Well, I mean,
The,
after all these years, they must know that, you have the experience and the ability and
yes. And his example would be the new guy might spray the product or the whatever the component that you're trying to clean, whereas I will spray the rag. So
right.
does it make a difference? Sometimes it does. I'll see somebody washing a piece. We had a customer which literally the one SCR was on and the other SCR was commanded on. As a consequence, they got a short and it started to drain the batteries through those SCRs and it caught fire and all the rest of it. So another third party company was called in to clean it up. And what I saw was it just drove me bananas because you're washing that electronic piece of that component, that circuit board in water. It turned out to be deionized water, but it's water nonetheless. And I just, they dried it off real good and all the rest of it and then put it all back together. But holy cow, sometimes you start to wonder. As far as other places to go, uh, I oftentimes don't take the freeway. For example, going to Dallas, I don't take the freeway because the other way is shorter in either in time or mileage, and there's more sightseeing to be done. You can always stop at some of the shops and the like, and do some shopping with like cast iron and things that, uh, or things that I'm into, like antique malls,
Right.
slide rules. Like what's a slide rule? Yeah.
I know what a slide rule is. I'm not that young.
Some folks ask me, what the heck is a slide rule? It's like, well, it's a computer that doesn't use power, no batteries or anything, and it went out and they're looking at it in amazement. And it's like, yeah, we sent guys to the moon with one of these. Holy cow.
All right. Speaking of odd things, is there any tool that you keep in your toolkit that other techs might not have, but has saved has saved the day more than once?
Oh God, yes. I'm particular to a brand of tools called Wera, which is from the Czech Republic. Um, might be Germany. I forget.
Is it
Um,
the green casing?
yes, it's a black and green cases.
I thought that
Uh,
was Germany, but I could be mistaken.
tool. I'm sorry.
I thought that was from Germany. I'm not sure though. Yeah.
It's a black and green case, and it's a tool kit. But um, those have saved my ass several times because I just happen to have the thing that I need, whether it's a screwdriver, a Torx, a um, just a regular old socket set. Yeah, it'll double as a lot of things. I have our director of engineering. He likes to call them Flores's take apart screwdrivers. You know, it's 45 minutes trying to select the correct screwdriver bit. It doesn't take 45 minutes. And it depends on whatever job you want to do. But once again, it's a screwdriver kit. It's not a screwdriver. So you can have a P1 Phillips, a P2 Phillips. There's even a P3 Phillips in there, the slotted screwdrivers and so on. And they're insulated. They're good to 1,000 volts. So it's not that I don't care, but I really just don't care. It will save my ass.
All right.
Torque wrenches are another big one. You have your big old torque wrench, which is good for 20 to 150 foot-pounds, let's say, and you have your little bitty torque wrenches, which is 20 to 106 or 110 inch-pounds. That makes a difference. And in batteries, actually, will go to I think it's 175 inch-pounds. So torque wrenches are kind of important.
Absolutely. Especially, for your particular company that you work for,
Yes.
they do a lot of mechanical, electromechanical stuff that requires specific torque values, and
Yeah.
it's probably one of the most difficult jobs. One of the bearing changes you guys do with the blow torches and everything. I won't go into all of it, but it's probably one of the most difficult and technical jobs that most people will do in this industry.
Sure. But even whether it's a rotary UPS or a static UPS, even just replacing the capacitor bank, um, as an example, you have to be able to torque all of those connections down. And if it's a quarter 20 volts, then you have to be able to produce whatever the torque it is, 20 foot-pounds or 25 foot-pounds, whatever it is. Could be as much as 35 foot-pounds, depending on what kind of steel, whether you use lubricant or not. But sure, it doesn't have to be a rotary UPS. You don't necessarily have to be doing that. It could be anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was just making a point that,
Yes.
Yeah, changing a bank of caps is a little tedious and you have to torque stuff and everything. But when we're talking about moving a multi-ton machine
Yes.
with a gantry to take parts of it off and blow torching parts of it off so that heat up so they expand, it's a lot more in depth. And I don't think enough credit is given to the people who lead those jobs, you know, especially the fact that you have controls techs, you have UPS techs, you have battery techs, and then
Yes.
you have generator techs, and then you have the pillar tech who does just about all of those things, right? And they're basically a rigger too, right? They have to do rigging and move heavy
Yes.
machinery.
Yes. As a matter of fact, yes.
So
We
it's a difficult job, you know.
It can be. Yes.
So if you were just going to start your career tomorrow all over again, what would you what advice would you give yourself at that point?
Oh.
Don't do it, run. No, no.
Oh, I actually, funny guy. Actually, I would go the other way. I would say to myself, learn as much about the equipment and the engineering behind it as possible. And the reason I say that is you want to make life easier at 3 o'clock in the morning when somebody calls you up and says, "Hey, I got this problem, this issue over here. Are we good till 8, 9 o'clock in the morning when you show up? 7 o'clock in the morning when you show up?" And it's like, yes, no, it's not a problem, or I'm going to have to be there right away, or something of that nature. Um, I
Yeah,
remember,
because in this industry, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but in this industry, a lot of people don't realize a lot of the customers have mandatory response times,
yes,
right?
yes, they do. And you have to be able to react right away if necessary, or you can tell the guy to, well, go do things to himself because it's just not that important. It has no effect on the function of the gear. A friend of mine used to work on the SCRs for the drives for the derricks out in the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, as the case may be. And just to wake him up, starts the clock at $600 an hour. And this was in the 60s. That was a long time ago. But if you wanted to get him up and get him into a helicopter and get him out there to look at these drives, these people were losing millions of dollars an hour. The companies were, the oil riggers were. So getting him up at $600 an hour, peanuts.
Right.
Getting us up at $200 or $300 or $400 an hour, depending on what you're doing, it's peanuts.
Right, because some of these data centers, they're moving a lot of data around and they can stand to lose a lot of money per minute, you know.
Yes, yes,
Banks, trading companies, data centers, hospitals, lives could be at risk, you know.
yes. Social media, it's in the millions of dollars per hour, I think. And if you have a customer who, as clients, are some of the social media uh, companies out there, uh, they tend to lose or can lose millions of dollars per month renting or not renting a computer room floor based on whether or not they can continue operations. And one of those operations is, hey, can we keep this social media company alive and going? Versus, that's too bad. We're just going to let it fall. No, you can't do that.
Right, right. So just to put a
And
little,
speaking,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, just speaking of stupid shit, um, I was in California and a car came around the corner a little bit too fast and hit a fire hydrant. And the water sprayed right up into the 65 or 69 kV lines and shut the place down. It's it.
Jeez.
Oh, oh yeah. They went to battery and what alls. They went to diesel, but it's like we're in the middle of testing and we didn't call for anything. What the heck is going on? And that's when we find out that two other buildings are also on diesel because some guy just didn't drive right and decided to hit a fire hydrant.
That's insane. And the thing I was going to say, just to break down the point you were just making and make it easier for the some of the viewers to understand. So let's say you've got Facebook, right? And he's got data center A over here, data center B over here, and data center C over here, all owned by different companies. And he pays data center A millions of dollars a month to keep his servers online so that everybody can keep logging into Facebook. And that
Yes.
same company might also do Twitter. That same company also might do the Food Network or whatever. I don't know. And so they're all paying this company, this data center millions of dollars a month to make sure that they never lose power, not even for a second. So if they lose power even for a second, their reputation could be so hurt that they lose millions and millions of dollars to them, that people are paying them for their advertising, for their
Yes.
whatever else they're doing on their site. So they might say, okay, we're going to leave data center A and we're going to move to data center B. And that would be detrimental to that data center. So they depend on people like John here to make sure that the units are being maintained properly. They're being advised properly on how to operate them, when to change batteries, when to change bearings, right, on a mechanical battery. And they're counting on these companies to keep them up because they might be,
Yes.
dealing with the air condition internally, or they might be dealing with the chill water internally, but 99% of the time they're going external to a vendor like your company for the UPS and the batteries. So yeah, they're putting a lot on the vendors, and these vendors are in a really high stress situation when they show up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They one company that I know of, they guarantee electric power, which is our UPSs. They guarantee HVAC, the temperature, and humidity to some value, and they guarantee security. If any of those are ever broken, if they ever have a problem with any of those, then somebody just lost 10, 11 million. Well, that's an old number, but somebody just lost millions and millions of dollars a month.
Wow. Oof. Could you imagine losing
That
that kind of?
that's it. Well, it gets horrible. Yes, you had this issue happen over in New York City, but you have this horrible feeling that when you leave a place, it better be working, because if it ever stops working at 2 o'clock in the morning, uh, somebody's going to be calling somebody.
Yeah. So you've mentioned 2, 3 in the morning multiple times now. You know, Obviously, like I said earlier, you have an on-call rotation. How does that ever affect your homework balance and social schedules and things of this nature?
If I'm on call, it's not a problem. I schedule things around being on call.
Okay.
So an example of that would be this coming Friday, for example. I'm not on call. I can take the day off, and it'll give me a 4-day weekend. I don't have a problem with that. And I do have. Uh, I just bought a used. It's new to me pickup, um, and I'm going to pick it up on Friday. So I'm taking some time off so I can do that, and it doesn't affect me at all as far as social life goes, because when I'm on call, that's when I don't schedule things, and when I'm not on call, that's when I do schedule things. And the understanding is occasionally I have to go somewhere. Uh, Being a bit of a farm guy, it's a little difficult to justify getting together with the neighbors. There's the occasional square dance, things of that nature. At the end of the year, there's harvest festivals and the like that we like going to. But that's food and more food.
Fair enough.
Yes, especially well, things like chili spiel, for instance, in Flatonia. Um, if it falls on an on-call week, you can schedule around that to some extent, or you just don't go. The Renaissance Festival is another example. Sometimes we'll go on a not on-call week, where I'll take time off to actually go there, and somebody else will be on call. Another example would be the farm jamboree. That's where you see the old tractors and the nice Mennonite ladies come out and they sell their candies and stuff. You schedule things around your on call. It's not
Okay.
that hard.
Yeah, but I mean, to people who don't work in an industry where there's an on call, it's like, it's like a foreign language to them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so just trying to, like, I'm trying to really get some exposure. So I want people to understand what this lifestyle is like, but I don't want them to think it's all bad. I was at um, I was down recruiting, trying to, pick up some new people for the company I work for. And I was at this conference. And one of the things that I said that I think drew a lot of people and garnered a lot of attention is the best and worst part of the field service lifestyle is you go home when the job's done. Meaning, if you go to do a troubleshooting call and you figure out the problem in 5 minutes, you're going home, right? And that's your day's work.
Yes.
Whereas if you're working at a 9 to 5, you're stuck in that building. Whether or not there's anything to do, you can sit on your hands for 8 hours. You still got to be there, you know.
Yes.
Unlike the field service life. So that's something I like to say. But how do you feel about that? Do you feel that's a benefit or negative or
It has its pluses and minuses. The minus would be you go to a site, you fix it right away. You might find something else. Chances are you won't, and then you get to go away, and you're done for the day. I get to go home and work on things like enclosure PMs, answering questions on the phone, uh, emailing customers, and the like. And the company I work for now has started a so-called ticket system. We've always had it, but now the director of service wants to make us look at it more. Yeah. So we go through there and we go through the ticket system, and it does keep better track of what we do and how we do it. An example would be um, a customer had a problem with the PLC always showing mains failures, for example. Well, nobody wanted to deal with it, so I dealt with it, but I used a ticket system to keep track of what was happening. There's other examples um, where once again, it's if you're done with a job, you're done with a job. And if the ticket system, you go through there, you look at all the jobs, you got your time in, you got everything done. You can do a bit of writing like an enclosure PM, for example, or you had mentioned safety. One of the things that we do is I get to assign people safety. So, hey, it's been a while since you did your bloodborne pathogens thing. Off you go again. So, got to do that. Hey, it's been a time since you've done your NFPA 70E certification. So, you got to do that. And that's not terrible difficult to do. As being the guy who does it, I sometimes assign classes to myself just to see if they're worth assigning. An example of that would be rigging. Okay, do I want to assign a guy rigging other than just basic rigging? And the answer is no, because if you do that, he's going to learn all about crane signals and flagging and shoring things up and how to set a crane down and all the rest of it. Whereas all he really needs to be aware of as a technician is they're moving stuff around you. Be aware of that. Be careful with that.
don't put your hands under?
Well, you don't. Yes. Oh my God, I got asked one time. Here's this 151,000 pound enclosure, and here's this belly tank. Can we put it on crosswise? Like, no, just no. But we're gonna leave it there overnight. Like, no. And the answer is no. No then, no now. So they had to set up shoring and dunning and all the rest of it, and then put it down. And I had warned them to use a 500-ton crane because a 360-ton crane didn't have the reach. So what they would have to do is take the crane around to one side of the wall, pick up the product, put it around the other side of the wall, set it down, move the crane over, pick up the product, and then set it down. Whereas with a 500-ton crane, you wouldn't have to do that. You just pick up the product and put it down. That's it. You're done. Well, sometimes it works that way. Sometimes it don't. Sometimes you have to leave things in the middle of being done, uh, and it's a short night. It's going to end up being a short night. 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then you're back at work the next morning at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, whatever the case is.
Okay. On that, which of the different types of jobs, right? The different types of task days, courtesy visit, maintenance, repair, troubleshooting, commissioning, which is your least favorite to do?
My least favorite is, um, no, it depends on what's going on. Courtesy visits are always great because you get to greet the customer, drink the coffee, and shake his hand, and all the rest of it, and then off you go. Commissioning, you get any of a number of things to do, dealing with managers and engineers and other vendors. The
GCs. Yep.
Yes, you've been there. You know the story. If you other things like PMs are the best because you go in there, you do your preventive maintenance, you're done. You're going to do a preventive maintenance on switchgear controls, for example. You go in there with your screwdriver blades, whatever the case is, and you hit every screw that you possibly can hit. You're done. There are some things you can do a pull test on. Some things you would rather not do a pull test on. For instance, you might have a small wire that has mains on it, and it's just for detection. But if you pull it, it might come out of its socket, and if it does, you're going to induce a mains failure. So you have to be careful what you're doing. The other one, troubleshooting and repair, um, it depends on, I think, who the customer is and what the problem is. I had one customer, oh, such a joker. I love the guy, but sometimes I want to choke the crap out of him. He would wait until I was just about to connect my laptop to the machine to ask it what was wrong. And I already knew what was wrong. And then he would turn off the lights on me. Oh, yeah. A funny show. It's hilarious. It's not so hilarious when you're the one doing the connection and you kind of, there's a pucker factor in there somewhere.
All right, all
And
right. This is supposed to be about you interviewing you, but you just made me. I have to tell the story. My first day out on my own, I was in this job in Manhattan. It was an asset management company. I won't say the name. And the lady that was escorting me into the UPS room says, "Oh, there's your UPS. Enjoy." I walk over there. I go to put the thing in bypass, and she turns the lights off on purpose.
uh,
I looked around. I must have been as pale as a ghost, and then she starts laughing. I,
yes,
yeah, it's bad. It's bad. So being an experienced person and that happening, I get it. But my first day, that was just horrible. I'm sorry. Continue. I cut you off, John.
sometimes you get them that way, customers who know what they have and what they're doing and so on. I already, like I said, I already knew what the problem was. Just a little control power transformer. It's not that big a deal. And as soon as I connected that laptop and the lights went out, that's yeah, a bit of a factor there. I'll leave it at that. Um, Other customers are, what the hell do you think you're doing? And it's like, well, I have to be able to do this. They don't want you to do that. An example would be an internet connection. We can't expose them, and they demand that they not be exposed to the internet because there's hackers and scammers and wheeler dealers out there. So if they don't connect to the internet, by way of example, our newest product is not able to email uh, the company that it's okay. Every 15 minutes it does this. There's like clockwork. And all it'll do is it'll tell us that, can't connect to the network. No, okay, fine, we know that. Unfortunately, the alarm log gets full of such things, so I don't even think it does that anymore. But other customers, they don't, and they know what they have. You have to have a callback security or something of that nature to be able to control the machine. So you can't just be a hacker and say, well, I'm going to take over this machine, because it'll first question out of its mouth or out of its electronic mouth would be, "Who the hell are you?" and then hang up. So we don't care. As far as which one is the worst, uh, yeah, I'd have to say troubleshooting and repair. So a lot of times customers just don't know what they have.
I got you. You kind of led me into the next question once again. So looking ahead, we have these improvements or advancements in technology, like you said, the one that connects to the internet and emails itself, and eventually AI will probably even be built in. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you think it's going to affect the field service industry?
Well, my thoughts on AI are this. Eventually, AI will become powerful enough, strong enough to do most jobs except a technician's job. Even now, with the newest product, we're depending on the machine to take care of. That's a sort of an AI. We're depending on the machine to take care of itself. But even then, once a year, a person has to go and fill the grease hopper with grease. They have to go and test it, and they have to go and make sure that it works the way it's supposed to. That's the UPS itself. As far as the switchgear goes, we got a bit of ways to go before that happens. But eventually, AI, I think, will take it over.
Interesting.
Kind
So
of hard for
instead of having you mentioned PLC earlier, that stands for program logic controller for people who
yes,
don't understand. So instead of having the program logic controller making decisions based on digital relay logic, the AI will just make the decision knowing what its job is and what it's supposed to do.
yes, yes. And the technician, we think of technicians as being replaceable eventually, but I think that'll be the last ones to go, as it were.
Okay. All right. Let's get into some easier questions now as we kind of move towards the end here. What is the most valuable non-technical skill that you've learned working in this industry?
Learn to read and write. I'm serious. It's uh, if you don't or can't make sense out of an English sentence, um, you have a problem. If you really do. Other languages like German, even something as unusual as Hebrew, Greek, um, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, it's fairly difficult. But the the language of business across the world is English, and you have to learn to read and write. If you can't do that, then there is no call for you to be a technician. There is no call for you to be um, there's no reason for you to write procedures because you just don't know how to do it.
Right, but what
Sure,
did
you
non-technical
might be
skill?
the
What
best
non
attorney.
I'm sorry, I think you missed on the question. The question was, what non-technical skill did you learn?
No, you mean like working on a computer? I'm not
Yeah, that
afraid of I'm not afraid of Word or Excel or even PowerPoint. A lot of my classes are made of PowerPoint. Outlook, not a problem. But you have to not be afraid of those things.
okay. Um, all right. So, being that you work in this industry, and a lot of people, like your friends and neighbors, might know that, do they often ask you to help them out with technical problems at their house?
I wouldn't go with often, but being a farmer and being a UPS technician, switchgear technician, there's times when I have had to go and figure out why the well pump, for example, isn't running. The cows are out of water. Well, okay, let me go figure out what's going on. It's usually something stupid like a fuse, or in the last case, there was actually no water. We're Texas in a heavy drought right
Mm,
now. Um, but it's usually a fuse or a breaker or something of that nature.
right.
A couple of times it has been a tank that leaks, And of course, you're not going to get any water. The water's going to go somewhere else.
Yep. It's pretty easy to find. Up, the water's not in the tank, but the soil over there is pretty
Right.
soggy.
That's right. And you do get to meet some interesting critters. Snakes. I hate snakes. Um, I've yet to see a rattler, but I have seen copperheads, coral snakes, big black snakes, and things. I don't like them, not because they're not poisonous and they look like a snaky thingy, but they do eat baby chicks and eggs. So that's why I don't like them, the big snakes. There's some other critters, scorpions, centipedes, um, Satan's crickets, we call them, the black widows.
Ooh.
Yeah. Recluses, sure, they'll run and hide, but the black widows, they'll just sort of sit there and look at their rag sack and look at you and wonder if you're worth biting.
Yeah, I'll pass on those guys.
Yeah, but that's how my job relates to home life. Is occasionally I will get asked about something technical, lights, fans, things of that nature. Can you really capture water from the air? Well, it turns out that yes, you can. Takes a bit of doing, but and it takes electric power to do that with, but it is doable. So we
Okay.
out. It's just not that bad a drought.
What's one thing about field service work that would surprise people who've never done it?
Wow, that's a long, hard thought. I would have to say, um, occasionally you just don't have a place to sleep. You'll go do a job, whether it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night, whatever the case is, um, and you're done. So next step is, well, I'm 5 hours from home or whatever, a 5 hour drive from home. So I'm just going to go check into this hotel. Now, turns out that the hotels are full because somebody has some sort of an event going on. It's rare, but it does happen. Um, rest food. Oh my God, there's lots of food all over the place, and all different kinds of food at that. Uh, yes, I do. I have popcorn. Popcorn is good. Yes,
So
but that's it.
what do you do in those situations where there's nowhere to sleep?
You just have to drive to the next town over and hope to find the place to sleep, or use your smartphone or something and start making phone calls. It's okay. This town is along the way. Yes, no. There's hotels going there. An example would be, um, I live near Austin, Texas, and when the Cars of Americas or whatever it is, the F1 cars, whenever they get together, this place is a zoo. It's already got 7 separate universities. So Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturday nights, yeah, it's pretty crowded out there. But once you get the local racetrack going, it's hard to find a hotel. And I'm not talking about just Austin. I'm talking about all the surrounding towns: Lockhart, Luling, Gonzales, Bastrop, Elgin, Georgetown, Round Rock, even further west toward Leander, Liberty Hill, maybe as far as Kerrville, although that is kind of far away. But once again, it's not on my way home. So, but if you have an event going, it's not just one town that gets affected. It's possibly as many as several dozen towns, all within about 120, 150 miles from each other.
Yeah, it's about the same over here when the Pocono Raceway, you
Okay.
know, when they're in town, all the hotels are booked and the prices go up dramatically.
Oh,
Okay, so you're in one of those situations, there's nowhere to sleep, and you and I have both been in this industry since before the invention of the smartphone.
yes.
So, I mean, and you before you exceeded me. So I remember printing out map quests the night before my job and navigating like a pirate with a map.
Yep.
Um, you've probably been there, sit there since before that. You probably actually had like a map book to get around before there was MapQuest.
Brand McNally map book, and it was a great big book, and you start plotting where you want to go. You use it like a chart. You make marks on it, and off you go. At such and such a time, I'm going to be here. Such and such a time, I'm going to be there. You have to plan your trips around about, depends on where you go. Getting older, maybe it's slower. A young buck might go a little faster, but you have to plan around 50 miles an hour or so. Okay, so in 1 hour's distance, 1 hour's time, I can go from this town to that town. In 2 hours' time, I can go from this town to that town, and so on and so forth. And you start looking around to see what's on there. You're going to eat lunch at noon-ish, and that's the best you can do. Well, there's unfortunately the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and so on of the world going around there. But you also have restaurants, the Denny's and the IHOPs and so on, if you're into that sort of thing. But yeah, back then we used to have pay, and the way that I would get directions to a site, I would actually call a technician that's going there or has been there and start asking them for directions. This is off a landline to ask them how do I get to such and such a customer. Oh, well, you have to come up this highway and that highway and get on this highway. And oh, by the way, that's a toll road. Now it's a problem. Um, and you had to know how to get there. You couldn't rely on your cell phone because they didn't exist at the time. Now it's
Okay, so in your day, just to paint a picture for what this is like, okay, you get up, you call the day before to try to get some kind of directions. You write it down, you plot your course on your map, you figure out what time you have to leave to get there. There's no way to know what traffic's going to be like if you've never been to this place before, right? So you plan to get there early and you take all the stuff, you make a wrong turn. Now you got to figure it all back out. You got to pull over and reroute, maybe stop at a gas station and ask for advice. And then finally you get there, right? And let's say now you're in a city like New York or Chicago, and now you see the building, right? But now you have to go find a place to park, right? So you got to go find a
oh my
parking
God.
garage. So you already paid your
Yep.
tolls, you already paid for gas, or you might have had a gas card, and now you got to go to a parking garage and pay the parking garage. And now you've got to bring your flash gear, you've got to bring your meters, your tools, um, your laptop and everything else. Back then, it would have been a ream of paper, right, to write your jobs on, right? Because
Yes.
you have to fill out the service report after. So now you've got to tote this thing. It could be 80 degrees, could be 90 degrees in the summer. You're wearing your jeans or your khakis or your
Yep.
dungarees or whatever. You got your laptop bag on. You're pulling a cart full of all this gear, right? That you
Yep.
might have to go 3, 4, 5 blocks of the city where there's people walking everywhere. And then you get to the place, and now you have to get through security, and security might be for the building, not for your specific vendor. So now you have
Right.
to explain to the security person who you are, and then they have to call and figure out. It usually takes a half an hour. They
Yep.
come down finally, get you upstairs, bring you into the room, and then they might not even know what gear you're working on, where it is, and at that point they might say, "Oh, well, you can't do that today." So you made this whole trip out there.
Yes. And that happens more than you would think because um, flying runs are the worst because you'll take 3 or 4 ready kits with you with the spare parts kits, 2 or 3 tool bags, an overnight bag, a sleeping bag of some kind or something, um, suitcase, and you get to your rental car, you do your thing, and you get to a site, and it's like, no, you can't work on that right now because whatever the reason is. And but this has been scheduled for several weeks, for several days. We've been calling you, and everybody kept saying it's okay, we can do this, we can do this. And suddenly now you're telling me that we can't do this. And thankfully, a lot of people do know what they have. In the case of certain customers, which only have one UPS as an example, yeah, you kind of have to schedule around them. Um, Satellite services, for example, television satellite services. If if they go down while they are servicing their satellites, um, yeah, look out because somebody just lost millions and millions of dollars. All the
Right,
ads with it and stuff.
or
So
going out during their new primetime show that they're streaming or
yeah,
broadcasting back then.
exactly. And if you wait till 10:30 or 11, they're done. So you get a late start to begin with, and then they're done at 10:30 or 11. If it's just a PM, great. You're done at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can go back to the hotel. You can go home. You can do whatever it is you want to do, and that's it. If you have a PM run where such and such a customer says, yeah, you can come in and you'll have to wait till this time. Okay, fine. We can do that. Uh, unless it's tight and you have other customers that you have to service at the same time. Now it becomes not such a good idea. So you end up telling the customer that you have to get it done right away and so on. And sometimes it's bad enough that you have to do an online PM instead of an offline PM. Sometimes it's just like you're not doing anything at all. You cannot go to bypass period.
And some of the reasons why these mix-ups happen, it's because kind of like a game of telephone, right? You have the
Yes.
technician. So on the vendor side, right, you have the technician who's getting the job put on his schedule or her schedule, whoever, and they're the ones going to the job and doing it. But the person from the office that's calling and setting up the appointment may not know exactly the difference between, an online or an offline PM or a, annual or semi-annual. But then you also have they might know enough of what they're doing to know these things and make these distinctions, but the person that they're talking to on the other end doesn't know, or does
Correct.
know, but they're not the person who's going to be there, right?
Correct.
He might be somebody managing 15 facilities, and he's setting it up and saying, okay, I'm going to send an email to my facility and they should take care of it.
Yep.
That email might get sent, maybe it doesn't, or maybe it does, and the person who received it doesn't really understand it or care or whatever, because not just on the vendor side, but it's pretty standard, industry wide, being that people that work in the facilities and the vendors that go out there, that people are shorthanded and they're having to promote people into positions where they don't really know what they're doing. I've been to a facility where the person who was the security guard in the front of the building is now managing the whole data center, and it's like,
Yes.
what qualifies them to manage a data center? They don't know what we're doing. They don't know why we're here. All they know is to let us in, and then we explain what we're trying to do, and then they call somebody, like a customer, and the customer's like, "No, we need 6 weeks notice to do that, or three,
Yeah.
30 days notice to do that.
Yeah.
You're supposed to send us a notification email." And all these things is like so many breakdowns in the communication that by the time you get there, you just can't do anything. And on top of that, even if all that stuff was done right, there might be some paper that was missed during the trail, like an insurance form,
Yep.
um, to work in a certain building. Or I remember one building, you had to have a form filled out of saying what you were bringing in. Otherwise, they don't let you leave with anything. So I'm
That's
trying to leave with my tools, and they're like, "Well, you can't leave with that." I'm like, "Well, I came here with it. What do you mean I can't leave with it? You're telling me you're going to steal my property?"
right.
You know? But
That's
these little things happen all the time, or hazardous, job hazard analysis have to be done in advance, and if they're not
yep.
done, or so
Yep.
many so many things.
And some technicians, the local technicians should know these things. But if he's on vacation and somebody else is coming in to watch for him or whatever, now it's a problem because the new technician, the other technician, he might be well experienced, well versed in the machine that he's taking care of, but he doesn't know, in a word, he doesn't know the customers. Now it's a
Right.
problem. So what you're supposed to do is call the customer, make sure that everything is all set up and ready to go. Um, Make sure that you have any parts that you might need, um, and make sure that your computer is working for one thing, and be able to talk to the customer who's actually in charge of the place, not the security guard at the front desk. Or if it's going to be the security guard at the front desk, then the security guard has to know that, here comes this company and they're going to do whatever it is that they're going to do. That doesn't always work out that way.
Right. Right on. All right. So I guess one more funny question, and then we'll just kind of do a wrap up. If you had a field service superhero name based on your troubleshooting abilities, what would it be?
Lazy, super lazy, or Dr. Lazy. I don't know. Uh, get in, get it fixed, get out. And that would be my superhero name is yeah, I would like to think that after 35 years I know what I'm doing, but I'm just there to fix your problem, Mr. and or Miss, as the case may be. And then I'm leaving. And that's it. Good luck.
Okay. All right, so wrapping up here, what advice would you give to somebody who is considering getting into this industry, um, education wise, and just like advice wise to take the first step to go down this path? What advice would you give them to point them in this direction, if you would even do that?
Well, it's not a bad job. It's not a horrible job or anything of that nature. It's not like you have to make life and death decisions, although sometimes they do turn into that. It's pretty rare. But I would tell them you want to start by knowing something about electricity. Like, don't touch the copper bars. That would probably be a bad idea. And I have the curly head to prove it. But that's being funny. But yeah, don't touch the copper bars. Don't PLC programming. If you're going to learn PLC programming, just be aware that there's numerous different kinds of PLCs. You have General Electric, you got Emerson, you got Basler, you got Allen Bradley, and so on. So sure, you can know something about relay logic and so on, and be able to program that way. Computer programming is not really going to do you a lot of good. Python, um, HTML, CSS, things of that nature, Java, JavaScript, and so on. They're great if you're an office worker. If you work in the office, you have to set something up for a person to look at, to get information from. That's wonderful. If you can do that, that's great. But you still have to learn electricities. You have to learn a system to see how that system works.
Okay, so would you say there was like a specific college program, or just is there like online courses available? Like how would you advise them to get into this field?
Well, my path was fairly regular. Go military and learn something about electricities and being a technician and so on. If you're a civilian, non-military, then going to college, an electrical or electronics degree would be the best thing to get. And not programming, not computer sciences, things of that nature, but an actual electrical engineering degree is the thing to get. It'll keep you off the streets, not as so much as a technician, but more of as an engineer. But if you do have to go on the streets where you have to fix things, you understand the greater implications of how a UPS affects the switchgear, how the switchgear affects the UPS, how the diesel is put into that corner, and you don't have to learn um, the intricacies of other vendor gear. For example, if I'm with this company here and we work with diesels to some extent, I have to know kind of sort of more or less how they work. Too much load will bog them down and all the rest of it. How to command them. Some of them use voltage, some of them use PWM, pulse width modulation. Some of them use other methods of controlling the diesels. You have to know how, or should know how, uh, or what effect it would have on the pieces of equipment if you cut those out. So learning electricities would be the first thing that I would recommend to anybody. And once again, this is from my path. I learned electricities at what I think is a fairly young age in high school, building amplifiers. That's how we started.
Okay. Um, quick plug here. One way you can get in, to get the knowledge that you would need to get started, at least in this industry, would be to read my book, Mastering Field Service Engineering, or Mastering UPS Field
Yes.
Service Engineering. And, you know, if you go to recruiters that are, more than recruiters, they're also consultants that can, give you some educational consulting and push you in the right direction if this is something you're interested in. Um, I'll leave my email for my business, FA Consulting and Recruiting. That might be a good path to get you going if you have some experience, or if you're in a like electrical job, like doing electricity, but not so much electrical, critical power engineering. That might be a path to get you there, because I can do some consulting, or we can do some consulting for you and get you pointed in the right direction on where to go with your career.
What's
And
your book
that's
about?
look. You haven't seen my book, John?
I
I'm
saw
gonna have
your
to.
quite some time ago, but I wanted to know what your book was about for the um
So it's a comprehensive in depth. Well, actually, I say comprehensive because it includes a lot of things, but it goes basically through all the things that a field service engineer is going to get into, right? From understanding logics, from basic electricity, Ohm's law, and all that.
yeah,
Um, how circuits work, how relays operate, how do you control the path of power on a complex circuit? How does a rectifier work? How does an inverter work? And it goes in and explains enough on all of these topics that by the time you get to the end and take the test, you'll have enough information in your head that you'll say, okay, I get what I'm doing here. I even have an understanding on how to put UPSs in bypass, and how to operate a switchgear, and what the safety precautions are, so I can get started down that path, you know. And it also has a ton of information on what other books you could read. It even has videos you can watch. It explains, it tells you the links on where to go. And
yes.
yeah, it's pretty. I've been worked on it for a very long time. It was near and dear to my heart to get this out because I've been in this industry about 24 years. So I wanted to get that onto paper and in front of people. And there's also, if you don't like paper, the Kindle version,
Sure.
So
Oh,
yeah.
very
So
good.
again, part of this whole thing with this, I'm sorry, John, I didn't cut you off. Part of the whole thing with this podcast is to get it out there, because there's such a small industry. We need to get more people. We need new blood. We need people here. But people don't even know what this is. They don't know what we do. We say UPS, they're like, "Oh, you wear brown shorts?" Like, I
Yes,
wish. I'm hot all the time.
I get that a lot. It's it's a question of or you're with UPS, the brown shorts guy, and it's like, no, we're not with them.
Not that we don't see them all the time, because we're always getting stuff in the mail.
Yeah. Well, we ship things back and forth, and things get shipped to us back and forth. Um, the other ones are FedEx. They're both our customers, but sometimes you get confused with somebody else. The nice thing is, if you were some sort of nuclear trained or a Navy technician, like a radio man or sonar technician, you could probably go into the UPS industry, uninterruptible power supply industry. If that's the military version. If you're going through college, an associate's in electricity, electrical engineering, or something of that nature would probably be quite helpful.
Right. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, hey, John, it's been a little over 2 hours, I think, here. It's been really good hanging out with you. It's been a while since we had some face-to-face time, We talk
Oh,
on the
very good.
phone here and there, but it's good to see you.
Yeah,
And
good to see you
have
too.
Really appreciate you sharing all this vast knowledge with us, and being animated on and talking about some of the things in your career. And it's been nice to hear, and I hope the viewers get something out of it and they enjoy it as well.
Let me know where the podcast is going to be. I'll tune into it. Um, some of the other folks that I know would be interested in this sort of thing. I know that there's a bunch of stories that I didn't go through, but uh, there's some funny ones, and there's some that are kind of creepy. That's being polite.
We can always have you on again, John. I want to get around to a lot of people and keep this thing going. It's going to be posted on LinkedIn, and it's going to be posted from my company page. So when I
Okay.
say my company page, I want to make the distinction, right? I have a day job. I work for a critical power engineering company where I am the director of service. Um, and I also recently opened a business, just me and my wife, recruiting. We're trying to help people, mainly people getting out of the military or people trying to transition into the critical power industry, the data center industry, and just try to help them get placed in some of these jobs. I have a lot of connections. I've been in the field from the better part of my career, so I've met people and stayed in touch, and I go to the industry events. So wanted to help people and spread some pay it forward, as it will. It's been a very good career for me, and I'm happy to help other people get started here.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. Okay. All right, Frank. I'm going to buzz off, as it were, because looks like it's dinner time over here in Central Texas.
Well,
And
you enjoy, John. It's always a pleasure. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
say hello to Corey and the kids, and we'll get together sometime.
All right,
All right,
sounds good, John. Take care.
Blazing
here.
lights, burning streets where the wild things meet. Fast lane rebel cries. We're chasing the highs in the dark of night. Our lights collide. Electric dreams, we're alive. Power for the night. We're born to roam in the field service light.